Welcome to my channel. This is an indication of some of the things that I cover on a regular basis in my videos. If you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do so, and don't forget to click the little bell so that you'll get notified of future videos. Please feel free to share my videos on your social media, and I hope you enjoy the video which follows. I'm going to make my absolute favorite pie. I always insisted that my mother make it every spring. It's a rhubarb custard pie. You can make it as a double crust pie or a lattice topped pie. I'm going to do mine in an open face in a tart shell. And the first thing to do is to make some pastry crust. I'm using a French recipe. Don't get scared by the name. It's called pâte brisée, but it's just simply a pie crust pastry made with butter rather than any other kind of fat like shortening or lard or whatever. And these are the ingredients laid out here. The link to the recipe for this gives it both in grams and in cups if you're doing cups. I have much better luck when I weigh mine. So this is 350 grams of all-purpose flour, a tablespoon, which is 14 grams of white sugar, 2 sticks of butter, which is 226 grams, and anywhere from a quarter of a cup to a half cup of ice cold water. Now, the butter that I'm using is a salted butter, so I'm not adding any additional salt. If you were using butter without salt in it, you would add a teaspoon, 4 grams of salt. So get the food processor out and see if we can get this part of it put together. First I'll add the flour. And the sugar. And if you were adding salt, you'd add that at this point. Just pulse it a couple of times just to combine them. And now the butter, which is cold out of the fridge. You want your butter to be as cold as possible. And I'll keep pulsing it until the butter is reduced into smaller pieces. See, I have one piece stuck up here in the cover. That's like, yeah, that's good. Sort of has the feeling of rough cornmeal. Now, tube there somewhere. It says to add a quarter of a cup to begin with. That's about that. More as needed until it's sort of well, it's getting there. I think that's about it. I'll turn it out on the counter. Shape this together. This is enough pastry for a double crusted pie. I won't be using that much because I'm only using the tart pan, which I've got here somewhere. I guess I could show you. They suggest dividing it in half, wrapping it in plastic wrap, and refrigerating it. You have to refrigerate it for at least an hour or until you're ready to use it. I don't think I will. That's the size of the tart pan on the removable bottom that I'm going to use. I think that's 8 wide and 12 long in inches. I won't need all of that, but I think I will probably divide it into a 3/4 lump and a 1/4 lump, wrap it in plastic wrap, and then I'll refrigerate it until I'm ready to proceed making the rest of the tart. There's my 2 pieces wrapped and ready for the refrigerator. The one that I'm going to use I've sort of made into a rectangle because I'm going to be rolling it into a rectangle rather than a circle. But what I wanted to show you, a little bit that's left over I'll pop in the freezer. I won't do that just yet in case I actually do need it, but I don't think I'll need that much. This freezes very well. It can store for a long time as long as it's wrapped airtight in the freezer. Bring it out and thaw it up for a couple of hours or so before you use it. Well, I have rolled it out into a very rough triangle. I didn't bother showing you me rolling it out because usually all you get to see is my elbows anyway, but I've put it around the rolling pin, which seems to be the easiest way to get it over the tart shell. And I'll just fit it down in. Quite an easy pastry to work with. I'm not very good with pastry. Get down in all the corners here before I do any cutting. Okay, just take the rolling pin and cut off the excess. The excess can be frozen with the other piece that I didn't use and put to good use later. For another tart or smaller tarts or whatever. Now while I prepare the filling, I will put this back in the refrigerator to keep the pastry chilled. I always get one corner I'm not happy with, and that's it this time, I guess. So, I'll bring you back in a few minutes and we prepare the filling. Well, this is my own rhubarb, which I just picked fresh out of the garden. If you've been watching my gardening videos, I'm still not using the rhubarb that I started from seed a year ago. It's up and doing quite nicely. The leaves are getting quite big on it, and there's quite a few stems with each plant, but let me give it more of a chance to develop, I guess. I will probably use some later on in the summer, but in the spring I'll just let it do its thing where it's such a young plant. This is from a patch that I've had for, heavens, probably 40 years or more. It's sort of getting smaller, the stems or whatever are getting smaller every year because I've been ignoring it for so long. It should be probably lifted some spring before it starts to grow, and put some good compost or manure under it, and it would be good for another 50 years. As you can see, it's still producing, it just isn't producing like it used to. My neighbors used to come get it and for baked pies for I think it was a special sale for a youth camp here. There isn't enough for them to bother with anymore. Well, the recipe says that we need 2 cups of rhubarb. Well, I think that's silly. Rhubarb isn't something that packs into a cup very well. You need enough rhubarb to cover the bottom of the pie, in this case a tart shell, ever how much that takes. So I won't make you watch me do all of the slicing. I'm going to slice it into very thin pieces. I like it to still have the shape of rhubarb, but I don't want the pieces to be too large or thick because they take longer to cook. So I'll bring you back once I have got my rhubarb all chopped up here, and we'll make the rest of the custard. Well, the oven has preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 175 degrees Celsius. And these are the ingredients. I have my rhubarb, considerably more than 2 cups. I probably won't use it all. A cup of white sugar. In my case, that happens to be vanilla sugar. I have a vanilla bean in that canister of sugar, so that'll add a little extra flavor, I guess. 2 large eggs. Mine are medium, so I'm doing 3 eggs. A half teaspoon of nutmeg, which I haven't ground yet. 4 teaspoons of milk, and 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So let's get that combined. I'll add the dry ingredients together here. Give them a bit of a mix. I love the flavor of nutmeg, so should I get a bit more than a half teaspoon in there, I won't worry about it. I guess that is enough. Now, I'll beat the eggs up a bit before I put them in, I think. Milk. My nice free-range egg certainly turned it a lovely yellow color. Even my older hens are laying quite nicely right now. They'll probably slow down again come summer, but I'm getting more eggs than I can use. I'm giving some away all the time. So. Happy with the egg situation right now. Well, I'll get the tart shell out of the fridge and we'll put this together. I'm going to put this on the sheet pan here, just in case it boils over. Try to salvage the oven. The instructions say to cover the edge of the crust with foil so that it won't burn. I think they're referring to if you were making a pie and you had like a fluted edge. This crust is all down below the surface, so I don't think that's going to be much of a concern. Hope not anyway. Time will tell if I bring a burnt one out of the oven, right? Well, I did use all of that rhubarb. Let's hope I have room enough for all of the custard. And this bakes for an hour at 350. So, trying to get the custard distributed out to the edges before I put it in the oven. Sure, in the heat it would probably just flow out there anyway, but it would be a bit disappointing if there wasn't custard everywhere when it came out. I will bring you back when it's ready to come out of the oven. There is the finished product, looking quite good and smelling delicious. Now I have to wait for it to completely cool before I can either cut it or remove it from the tart pan. And that's the hard part, having to wait. Looks like it's completely done. Yeah, set up nicely. So I'll bring you back after I get the thing on a tray, and we'll have a slice of it and see what it's like. Well, it's completely cooled and it came out of the pan very easily. So I'll now see if it tastes anywhere as near as good as it looks. I don't know, a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a dollop of whipped cream might add something to it, but if it's anything like they've been in the past, I like it just the way it is. Well, as I say, it is my favorite pie, so I certainly hope you'll give this a try. Well, I'm having it with more of my Yorkshire tea. This pastry is very good. Nice and flaky. And even with the fancy name, it is very easy to make. You could make it just as easily with a pastry blender or a couple of knives if you don't have a food processor. But to put a piece of this in my mouth is too large and I'm not going to be able to talk for a bit. The tartness of the rhubarb and the sweetness of the custard and the flakiness of that pastry, it is very good. I've bragged up my own cooking enough now. I hope you will give it a try. Really quite easy to do, especially if you have some fresh rhubarb growing in your garden, or this time of year I think it's available in most supermarkets too. So with that, I will close this down and say thank you very much for watching.